Welcome to Life with Strings Attached. I'm your host, Jamie Gale. This week on Life with Strings Attached, we sit down with Reuben Forsland, adventurer, innovator, and the luthier behind JOI Guitars. Reuben's story stretches from backcountry snowboarding and near-death kiteboarding crashes to building guitars out of hempwood, carbon fiber, and even the wood of Jimi Hendrix's childhood home. What drives him? A relentless curiosity, a hunger for challenge, and a reverence for emotional resonance. This episode goes well beyond guitars. It's about risk, creativity, family, identity, and the thrill of making something meaningful. Reuben doesn't just create instruments, he creates wonder. It was an honor to share this time with Reuben Forsland, and I hope that you enjoy it as much as I did. Great to see you. Thanks for being on the show. Welcome to Life with Strings Attached.
Good to be here.
Yeah. How you doing today?
Yeah, it's been a nice day so far. I got out for my morning hike, and that's a good start. So,
yeah. You live in one of the desirable places in the world where lots of people like to go on vacation and such. You're on how do you describe where you live right now?
I'm in Vancouver Island. It's just off of Vancouver on a ferry, about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And fairly good size island with mountains, snow, beaches, all the things that you might want. And especially if you live in Canada, it definitely feels less like the cold Canada people imagine.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. My daughter and grandson and her husband, my son-in-law, just moved to your area of the world. I'm going to blank on where they are. They're at the top of the island. He's doing a scuba diving school. He's becoming a commercial scuba diver. And so they're there somewhere on the island. I don't know how close they are to you or not, but nonetheless. So maybe I'll get out there for a visit in the not so distant future. Yeah.
It's a fairly big island, so maybe up north in Port McNeill or one of the northerner towns that I think they make the bread and butter off of like fishing, logging, and scuba diving and those kinds of things. So
right. Yeah. So wonderful. So let me see. Where do we start with you? You got so much going on all the time. You are a projects guy. You are active. I mean, the first thing you said is you went for a hike, so you're feeling good. You like to move. You've been a professional athlete at some point in time in your life. Am I correct? If I get this right?
I would say almost professional in a couple of things. Yeah.
Yes.
I never,
nonetheless.
Yeah, I never made it quite to the professional level in both snowboarding and cycling. Both of them were like extremely strong passions of mine that I made it to a top tier in amateur, but never made the bridge across to fully commit to like a life of it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Great.
And I'm back into on the bike, and I did my first half Ironman this year. That was one of my goals, was to get back onto the bike, and I hadn't ever been a good swimmer. So I decided it was time to actually learn to properly swim and set myself a goal that was obtainable but still a challenge. And so the half Ironman was the challenge, which I was able to finish this spring. So
yeah. You know, it's one of the things that I've come to appreciate about you, Reuben, is that you take big bites. You know, you're not a passive person. I once had someone tell me that most people arrive at their destination in life just through indecision. It's decision through indecision. They just kind of end up somewhere, and you are not one of those people. You have had lots of pursuits, passions, possibly obsessions, you know, but when you do it, you're all in. So you didn't just take up swimming, did you? You set yourself some goals that probably most people would say, that's a little crazy. I could be wrong. But the goals were probably not small goals.
Right.
Yeah. Can you give me an idea as to what this goal is? What are you trying to do? You say take up swimming. I
Yeah.
swim every day when I'm
Wow.
here. I'm at my house on the lake in Canada, but I don't. But to give you an indication, I take a pool noodle with me most of the time because I'm just out there
Yeah.
soaking up the sun, cooling off in the water. But that's not what you're doing, is it?
Well, that sounds pretty wonderful as well. But this was actually a local have a rec center that I was going to, and I saw a swimmer with a Canadian flag on his hair cover thing, and went up to
Hmm.
him, and he was basically flying across the water.
Hmm.
So I said to him, "Hey man, can you give me a couple pointers?" And it turned out he was one of Team Canada's triathletes, and also high end in swimming. And so I ended up hiring him to teach me to swim, so that I could get it right. And then I basically trained for a year, about 4 hours a day, between swimming, cycling, running. I never did, but I'd go for hikes through the trees because it's such a beautiful place. So yeah,
Hmm.
I I yeah, I guess obsessive is maybe a bit of a strong word for what I like to do, but I feel like it's you definitely have it right. When I decide to do something, I definitely jump all in and try to experience it to its fullest and set goals that maybe are a little bit unrealistic for a bit. And same thing, I guess, kind of with my life with guitar building was the same thing. Jumped full in and felt like, okay, this is maybe over my head, but um, yeah, you keep trying and you keep working on it, and that's what I did. So
Yeah. Where do you think that comes from? Where do you think that, like, were you? I presume that your parents could have seen this in 3-year-old Reuben. That there was likely curiosity or an obsessiveness going back to things so you got it right. Am I wrong? Did that come out later in life, or is that part of your character from the early days?
definitely was there. Yeah, apparently it was like at 2 years old. I couldn't let my parents carry me. I had to run. Like they go for walks, and I refused to be carried. I always wanted to run alongside instead of be carried.
Yeah.
Why? I have no idea. It's always been I guess, my personality, and and then that how that kind of evolved in my life, I don't know, but somehow, somewhere in my life, I started enjoying the idea of pushing myself to, I guess you call it risk levels that are just to feel alive, I guess.
Hmm.
The genetics, maybe family genetics that are, my family's probably, I'd say, all mostly risk takers. I don't know why that is. And yeah, so it kind of turned into my work, and also
Hmm.
was very much involved in how I played. So
Hmm. Hmm. I mean, it develops a culture, right? It develops a culture within the family, and then they're the ones that are raising you, and so it becomes a part of what you are. I mean, there's people who are always counter cultural, and we call them the black sheep of the family. The ones who aren't quite like the
yeah,
rest of everyone in the family. But for the most part, you develop cultures.
that's
There's
true.
a guitar maker that I had in the podcast a while ago. The name is Simon Padalka. He lives in Canada now, but he's from the Russian Federation. I met him as a Russian guitar maker, and he when I asked him about this sort of perfection that he goes for, he is second or third generation architect. His father's an architect, his mother's an architect, his brother's an architect, his first wife was an architect. Like everyone is an architect. And so when we talked about his sort of pursuit of perfection, he said it wasn't unusual at all. It's what my family does. It's like he doesn't know what I'm talking about, basically. you know, the fish is unaware of the water, basically was his answer.
That is a great way to put it. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And so, if everyone in your family is a risk taker, I mean, it's amazing that you can identify the fact that you're risk takers, because that would have been your sort of benchmark, right? Uh, Risk takers is normal. So do you remember when you sort of realized that other people are not risk takers in that way? How did you differentiate yourself?
Hmm. I, I had a brother that I was very close to, an older brother,
Hmm.
and he and I did almost everything together.
Hmm.
So obviously he was 2 years older, so I was always a little lagging, I guess you could say, and
Hmm.
uh, so in regards to how I never really compared myself outside of my family,
Hmm.
just because of the tightness of me and my brother.
Hmm.
Um, we basically did everything together, cycling, snowboarding. Um, I later got into kiteboarding on my own, but the the big adventure things were always with him and I. Mountain
Hmm.
climbing, backcountry snowboarding, like doing stuff that was climbing the Columbia ice fields with our snowboards on our backpacks, and going up in summertime when it gets, well, it's dangerous all the time to climb the Columbia ice fields, but we basically just like throw a backpack on, no ropes, no crampons, and head up the ice fields until we get to the peak and snowboard up there. And yeah, so we pushed each other, I guess. But
Hmm.
outside of that, I got competitive with um, the cycling, but the snowboarding, I was just about to become competitive, and I moved from Ontario to Alberta, and that kind of shut that down. I was going to join a team, and then left Ontario. So
Hmm. Hmm. So, snowboarding, cycling, swimming. It's that type of normalcy that you grew up within that's interesting to me, because yesterday I got a picture from my brother that his son, my nephew, it's a picture of his Jeep and a red canoe on top, and he's in the Yukon, and he's up there by himself. Kind of like what you talked about, headed off into the wilderness. Most people that I know that snowboard go to ski resorts and they go up a lift and they come down. But I have
yeah,
family who lives up in northern BC where they don't go
yeah,
to ski resorts. They take a snowboard and they go out into the mountains, and
yeah.
some, it's risky. There's grizzly bears out there, and there's one time they had an avalanche come down and it buried everyone in the family except for my brother, who was traveling with the two dogs, who didn't want to take my brother's actually quite fit, but there's certain points where his family loves to take the most complicated route, and he's like, I'm going to take the other. I'll meet you there. and and
Hmm.
the dog stayed with him, and he heard the rumble, and it buried his wife and two sons,
Oh
or one
shit.
son and a friend. There was definitely three of them completely buried. Two of them managed to, had like arms out and such you could identify them, but the
Hmm.
wife, you couldn't hear her, you couldn't see her. The dog heard her. The dog found her, and they dug her out, and she's fine. But
Oh,
and that didn't stop him. He's still, my
oh,
nephew who's up there with a canoe right now and a Jeep by himself in the Yukon, the great northern Canadian wilderness. Goes out all the time. Like the last time I was out in northern BC, he was like, "Hey, Uncle Jamie, I'm not going to be here in the morning when you leave. I just wanted to say goodbye." And, "Oh, where are you going?" "Oh, there's going to be a great sort of aurora borealis tonight, so I'm going to go hike it into the mountains by myself and see it."
yeah.
At nighttime, which sounds terrifying to city dwellers like myself. Like, you're doing what by yourself? You sure you don't want to take someone, something, anything? No, no, just goes
Yeah,
up by himself, and
yeah.
yeah, I find that fascinating. And well, to you, I think I don't see you looking at that going, "That's crazy." I see a bit of a wild envy in your eyes, like, "Oh, he's where right now? I'd love to be."
That's I'm yeah, I'm drawn to. I think certain people are drawn to that to feel like experiences that it's not even about that other people don't or never have. It's just like to really experience it fully. And I guess the risk part is where it really makes you pay attention and you catch the
Hmm.
smaller things that way. And the time so we camped up on the Columbia ice fields one time, and a storm came in down below, and we were still like, it was 24 above, and we were in the sunshine, and there was a lightning storm down below happening, and it was coming straight up the ice fields at us, and it it was like evacuation for us. We had to get out of there. It was very dangerous to be in that position, but the only way out was to like head straight at the storm.
Hmm.
And while we were doing that, like we were riding, we rode down the ice field and like ollieing across that snowboarding, ollieing
Yeah.
across crevices as you're going as fast as you can down and get to the flat section. We're running with our backpacks, and the ice field actually starts moving underneath us. It started cracking. It sounded like a train was coming from like a kilometer away straight up at us, and it wasn't shaking like an earthquake, but it was like there was movement, and there was the sound of like a train coming at you, and it went like up. It must have The pressure of the storm must have did something to the ice field
Yeah.
that made it basically. I don't know if it cracked or what it did, but me and my two brothers all ran different directions. Nobody had lines, ropes, so we all ran different directions so that if anybody went down anywhere, that at least we could hopefully get them out. But I wouldn't have had that amazing experience without being in that stupidity. And there was two people that died up in the glaciers every year, so it wasn't
Yeah.
uncommon to not come out of there. The whole Japanese ice climbing team died there, so it was. Yeah, we were probably so naive, um, and lucky. All fortunate, I should say. Lucky is we were smart, but not smart enough. But fortunate to walk out of those places alive.
I don't think you walked in. You just say you ran and snowboarded and ollied, for other listeners who don't
Yeah,
know, is jumping with your snowboard on, like going over something, across something. You were jumping across cracks, openings where
yeah.
you might have fallen to your
They
death,
weren't big
possibly.
ones. Yes, yes, and no. Who know? You don't know. You don't know how deep it is. And they were
Right.
5 to 6 feet wide, and you just as you're coming at them, you time it, and you launch your body so that you make it over it. And yeah, I don't know. I never really knew anything different, so I didn't really think much of it. We got to the bottom. We were all really happy to be alive and got in the car and drove home. And
Oh,
then, like,
come on. You didn't know anything different. You didn't do that every day,
I
but
mean,
I mean, you just lived the Mission Impossible sequence. Like that's something that they set up in movies. Not that people do. You That's some serious
no,
downplaying, but that's
well,
that's
yeah. No, it really was just like, my brothers and I did some things that were just not, like we would go hike the snow in, or this hostel. We'd stay at a hostel in the middle of winter and hike 5 hours up a mountain,
hmm
head home 2 days later, and the roads would be covered solid where you could barely see the road for an hour and a half. We
hmm
kind of have the guy in the passenger seat was making sure that he was telling, like, no, go a little left, man. Like, I don't know. We had just some strange experiences, and put some good music on, and you got your brothers to go on the. Yeah, I had some really. My brothers have been really good to me and fun for my life, and I would say they really made me who I am.
hmm how old are you in relationship to your brothers?
I'm right in the middle.
In the
I
middle.
have two older and two younger.
You're one of
Um,
five brothers.
yeah, I'm one of five brothers. Yeah,
Any sisters?
no sisters.
Your mom had five boys.
Yeah, many people felt bad for her.
Well, it's an exciting life. I don't know if I feel bad necessarily.
Yeah, we were like, oh, five boys. Oh my, no girls. No. Yeah, it was just
Yeah.
us five brothers, so we're we're all pretty much the same. My oldest brother was into music. The rest of us, all of the rest of us are all kind of snowboarders, skateboarders,
Hmm.
cyclists. Um, yeah, one's
Yeah.
an iron worker. The other one, the other ones were carpenters, and one owns a coffee shop. So
Hmm. 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 Yeah. Wonderful. So and yeah, I mean, you obviously sound very close with your brothers. That's great. So I'm one of three brothers also, but three, not five. But I'm the youngest
mhm.
of three. I'm not in the middle. So it's the middle one who dug his wife out of the avalanche.
He never drug you along for the come on, younger brother,
Oh yeah,
let's
yeah.
see
I
if I can
mean,
get you to jump off the cliff first.
well, not quite that kind of stuff, but no. I've been out there, and they hunt because that's part of how people feed themselves when you live in remote areas. And
Yeah.
it was a few years ago. Back there, it was moose season, and my father's a Newfie. I mean, they grew up. If you didn't have a moose in the wintertime, you had a really hard time getting through the wintertime. It was very important for them to be able to hunt, or else they died, frankly, in rural Newfoundland. And so,
Yeah.
anyways, it's not unusual to me to know people who hunt. But I
Hmm.
grew up in the suburbs of Toronto. I didn't grow up hunting, and
Okay.
so my brother said, "Hey, it's moose hunting season. Come out with me." And he says, "I know you're not a hunter, but here's the bear gun. This
Oh,
this gun this gun has two massive slugs in it that will blow a hole, 30
now
centimeters
wait
into
till it gets
anything.
close enough. Yeah.
Wait till it gets close enough. Don't shoot
Yeah.
too early. You'll regret it,
No.
And so I'm, like, okay, well, I eat meat. So fundamentally, I shouldn't have a problem with the idea of getting the meat. And so I went through this psychological exercise in my head, like, okay, I can do this. I can go along. I can do this,
Yeah.
you know, but it's still different to be holding a gun in your hand and walking out into the wilderness hoping to find something to kill so that you can eat it.
Yeah.
There's a very different psychological proposition than going to the grocery store, or to the butcher, even though the end result is the same thing. And
Yes.
so, yeah, there's still moments where we put each other into uncomfortable conversations. As a matter of fact, I think it was just yesterday or the day before that I had a 3-hour theological debate with my brother, because he's a very devout Christian, and
Okay.
I have some of that in my history also, and so we went at it hammer and tongs for 3 hours on the phone just a couple of days
Wow.
ago. So we still test each other. So,
Yeah.
but
That's a deep
but no,
conversation.
we never tried to outrun lightning storms and avalanches together. And just the
That
imagery.
might
I
be
mean,
safer than having a religious conversation.
sometimes. So just the imagery of what you were talking about, because a lot of people, of course, most of us experience storms from the ground, and
Yeah.
we're not really conscious of the fact that lightning is going in every direction. It's not just going down towards the earth; it's going up also. So when you say
Yeah.
you're above the storm on the mountain, lightning is striking up too, right? If it's a lightning storm, you were seeing
It was going sideways. It was
it was
going
going
back and forth.
sideways.
We
Yeah.
were
Okay.
in a crevice. There was two mountains
Yeah.
beside us, and we were up. The ice field house comes up between, and we were at the dome of
Yes.
it, and between, and so it was coming up like the road down kilometers way down,
Yeah.
through the valley, and then up through between the mountain ranges, and basically just bouncing back and forth between the mountains horizontally.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
but ultimately, sitting there didn't make any sense. I think it's like, at least if you're moving, you feel
Yeah.
like you're in a little bit of control of your experience. Sitting
Uh-huh.
there and waiting and watching, we did that for a couple minutes, and then we discussed how to maybe deal with the situation. I would have been maybe 16 years old, one brother
Mm-hmm.
14, one brother 18, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of came to the conclusion that getting out of Dodge is the best thing to do. And just like the buffaloes run at the storm, and hopefully you spend less time in it if you go at it. So, It doesn't really make
That's
sense,
great.
but there was no, the other side was actually a cliff. Like
Yeah,
the
well,
whole ice fields. There was, if there was another way to run, I would have ran the other way, but there was no
sure.
other way. Yeah.
Yeah. And so your back was against the wall, figuratively speaking. There was no wall,
Exactly.
but effectively you were at the end. Yeah. And
Yeah.
wow, remarkable, man. And you said things like that. Tell tell me that's the worst situation you were in.
Oh, I mean, not really, but I've, um, I mean, I woke up, and as a cyclist, you get into crashes. So I've woke up
Yeah.
on the ground a handful of times. One
Hmm.
time tore my earlobe off and broke this side of my face and ran head on into another cyclist. 50
Hmm.
kilometers an hour impact, my face to his chest. So that was more devastating than the glacier storm.
Hmm.
Kiteboarding, kiteboarding has been, I've broken ribs. I do kiteboarding since 2000, so 25 years now. And the early days, the gear was very dangerous.
Hmm.
It was still, it was evolving, but it was extremely dangerous. And yeah, it would throw you around. It was like being tied to a semi sometimes. If you didn't have control of it, it
Hmm.
had, you were like a twig on a tied to a waste paper bag in the wind. And it's about the closest analogy I could come up with. And almost drowned. I was minutes away from drowning and was pulled out by a boat in the middle of a lake that had seen my kite floating down the lake. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, there's been other occasions that have been closer to the edge, but for some reason I'm still here. Just need to be here, I guess, for some reason.
Love it. And then the most dangerous thing that anyone could do, you decided to make guitars. How the hell did that?
It is. It is.
How the hell did that come along? So you're a thrill seeker. Most people don't think of guitar making as thrill seeking. I mean, maybe trying to make a living as guitar making is thrill seeking, but not the making of guitars. So I mean, that seems like a juxtaposition to me. So how did you go from
Well,
the
yeah.
thrill
So I
seeking to guitar making?
started as an iron worker and almost fell off
Hmm.
a building at 60 feet up. And I did get my brother into it, and he's still an iron worker after 25 years.
Hmm.
He'll go up 62 stories. I never made it that far before I almost fell and decided that I didn't really like that feeling anymore. I had
Hmm.
kids and wanted to keep walking, and
Hmm.
so moved into carpentry. But guitar making, I'd say, I think the guitar makers push themselves as hard as someone who climbs a mountain, to be honest with you. I look at my peers and what they're doing, and I aim to do that myself. I'm always pushing myself as much as I can. Yeah, it feels like what I see around me with my peers, they're doing the same.
Hmm.
And so I actually feel it's quite similar in that sense. And the personalities are they're kind of the same. They're very dedicated people to an idea and to doing something well to the point of risk taking. I feel like it can be a risky business in the sense of um, the challenge of creating something that wants to collapse and building an instrument that is close to that as possible without doing it, and looking for a sound that you might be after. And yeah, I find a lot of similarities to the people, and they're all very, both those sports people that I grew up with, like my brothers or people that I was involved with in those sports, and luthiers are very welcoming, and I feel like they understand they understand the challenges of each other is taking on. It doesn't have to be the same thing. It could be a different sport in quotation or a different like kind of guitar or instrument, but have that pure respect, and yeah, so
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. It's the challenge, the adventure. Yeah.
definitely, definitely.
And you said Cedar Creek Custom Case Shop is your premier fretted instrument custom case maker, and we invite you to create a musical instrument case unlike any other, one that's unique to you. Every Cedar Creek custom case is hand-built by highly skilled craftspeople using only select woods, Providence Forge hardware, and premium instrument-friendly materials. At Cedar Creek Custom Case Shop, we are dedicated to helping you design the case of your dreams. Find out more at cedarcreekcases.com. Are you serious about the business of guitar? Then you need to join us on Patreon. We're building a future where guitar makers are able to live prosperous lives making instruments that inspire the musical experience, which helps to create a more beautiful world. Where others who are passionate about the guitar can thrive, those who help in the promotion and resale, trade shows, writing of books and articles are supported as a valuable part of the community. A community where we explore with curiosity and encourage those around us in their endeavors. With a community effort, we can accomplish far more than we can individually. So let's be serious about your guitar business and join us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Jamie Gale Music. We are better together, so let's do this together. I love where we've been, and I'm excited about where we're going. This space is normally reserved for brands who make stories like this possible, like the Dario and the Cedar Creek Custom Case Shop. If your company belongs in this conversation, let's talk. We partner with brands who value craft, culture, and the quiet power of a well-placed idea. I think every guitar that you try to make is a challenge, an adventure. So there are lots of guitar makers, very respectable guitar makers, who build a body of work, meaning they have a certain amount of shapes, and then you build those shapes, you build those sort of materials and such. But your guitars are under constant evolution. You don't do a traditional shape. You don't do a traditional construction. You don't use always traditional materials. And even when you think you get to know what a JOI guitar is, each piece has a different narrative structure because you've had an idea or a story or collaboration to build into each guitar. None of it looks like it's at risk of becoming stagnant anytime soon.
Oh, I'm happy that that's how you see my work. That is what I'm aiming for. Partly to keep learning, partly to refine, and but ultimately to try and connect with people. I feel that for me, there's a real connective piece with possible clients or players in the form of products that are out there, and they don't have to be the standard guitar product that is built with. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you aim high, as I said earlier on. Aim high and take big bites, and you're from collaborations to materials. You go for it. And there's lots of people, I don't know, we can choose something, from building a guitar for Slash to working with the Hendrix Foundation to make a guitar from wood from Jimi Hendrix's childhood home, to working with native carvers, and collaborating with them, advanced but yet unproven materials sometimes,
Definitely.
all of this would be enough. But then you look under the hood and everything inside is different too. The bracing is different. The construction is different. And acoustic guitars are hard enough to build, and they're mostly built at right angles. And then you made a collaboration with a guitar player who wanted a more ergonomic guitar with fewer right angles and a few more twists in it and such. And when you first see the guitar, it looks, mostly like an acoustic guitar. And then I asked people to start citing the lines of this guitar, experienced people who know what a guitar should look like. And all of a sudden it's like the Matrix is revealed and the world shifts around them a little bit. And you see, really complicated movements within a structure that looks like it's built at normal right angles. And so it's a constant challenge. You keep setting the bar higher, and you're still, what is it? Curiosity? Are you chasing something? Is it just the fact that you can't sit still? What is it?
I think part of it is that I was taught by a luthier that only built a guitar and a half. And so, and he was a psychologist actually at like for a living, and he built a guitar and a half and decided to start teaching. And I was his first and only student. And I think that's kind of informed how I look at the instrument because I learned from somebody who, while I was building, is saying like, this doesn't make any sense, man. Why are you doing it like this? Being a carpenter since a journeyman red seal since '97, and then growing up, my dad
Mm-hmm.
was a stonemason, so I grew up in construction sites. So like building things has always been there my whole life, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that having him teach me, well, I know having him teach me informed my approach in the sense of a lot of question asking and less rules. Like
Mm-hmm.
if I asked him why, he wouldn't really know the answer because he hadn't like a guitar and a half.
Right.
You have literally no answers for somebody other than
Right. This one
so
didn't fall apart, so I'm one guitar ahead of you.
yeah, and I love him and I appreciate him and I appreciate what the experience was because it gave me like I have had all those tool skills. I
Mm-hmm.
just needed that first like step into and opportunity to create a guitar. And then after that, it was like I could inform myself more and I felt less like I needed to do what somebody said because the guy who was telling me didn't have any real idea. And I did read books and that helped for sure. I had to involve that kind of learning into my work. But at my base, I was already like questioning everything, not in the
Mm-hmm.
sense of like thinking it would that whatever's already done that isn't good enough, but just, what what else can be done, and that includes like the products that you work with. I wondered, I wonder what else can be built. A guitar can be built out of instead of knowing what's out there. I want to be taught what I can be
Mm-hmm.
built with, what can be built into an instrument.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that comes with other people reaching out. Sometimes that comes with me searching for the things. A good example would be I knew that hempwood was out there and people were building products out of hempwood, but an acoustic guitar in the traditional way had never been built out of hempwood. There's a
Mm-hmm.
hempcrete. There's a Cana guitars out of Europe. He does a hempcrete.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a totally different process than what I did.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an example of like, okay, there's products out there that people are doing things with
Mm-hmm.
that I pursued. And then the quilted carbon fiber, John Blasey from Lam, he reached out to me and said, hey,
Mm-hmm.
I see you're a luthier at a certain level that is open to working with uh, objects or products that are still new to the world or never been used in the guitar, an acoustic guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where other like that carbon fiber was born out of that
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to collaborate with someone who had came up with a product that was yet to be proven. So
Mm-hmm. So when I ask you what it is, what makes a difference, you could have just answered, Jamie, I'm wonderful. I'm full of wonder. Because
I
that's the
am
only way to
full of
describe
wonder,
that.
that's for
You
sure.
are full of wonder, really, and your work is wonderful. And I know that sounds funny because of the way that we use the
Thank you.
word and the term wonderful, but really, you are full of wonder, and it shows because your work is wonderful. And it's one of the reasons I really enjoy the opportunity to show and talk about your work. Whether it be at the NAMM show or on tour with the Boutique Guitar Showcase, getting a chance to talk to someone else about the materials, about the story, about the collaboration, or whatever it happens to be, always inspires wonder in those people. If you're a curious person, you want to know more, you want to understand it, and you want to fit it into your sort of, world model within your head. And there are ways we view instruments, and there's a utilitarian sort of functional way that many people view guitars. And when you take them down and you say, this is a wonderful musical instrument, and it is a great utility to making instrument. However, there's actually a lot more going on here. There's a lot of curiosity and wonder and experimentation, and you can share the narrative, and you can develop and share concepts that maybe they've never really thought about before. And that's, we took one of your guitars made from materials from the Jimi Hendrix childhood home in Seattle. And it was remarkable to see people who grew up in Jimi Hendrix music just in reverence. They had reverence for that guitar. They're like, this wood is from his childhood home? Like, yes. And then they'd like stop and they'd like touch it. And like, oh, can I? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
And they felt like they were in the presence of God. It seemed, that might be a little bit much, but that's how they acted. They acted like that. Oh my God, I'm approaching, yeah,
Well, they
something really special.
experience themselves. I feel like you really experience yourself when you connect like that. Like those
Hmm.
people are experiencing, I feel like that's what the beauty of those those builds are, is somebody gets to almost step back to become a child again and remember. It's like it brings them, it's like when you hear a song, it brings you to the place that you heard it or why you love it. And when you can create an instrument out of an iconic guitar player like Jimi Hendrix, it can really reach people. It can push people away equally as well, but it can really connect with people deeply because
Hmm.
of their love for him and what that he might and his music might have done for them. I know that he was a meaningful person to a lot of people because of the way he walked through, uh, the way he walked through how he shared himself with the world musically and as a person.
Hmm.
And I think people connect with the idea of this person who really had challenging childhood and had what you would expect had no possibilities and turned that around and gave the world a massive gift and inspired many, many people to want to play the guitar, but it's like far beyond all of that. And so
Hmm.
for me, it really makes me, it almost makes me emotional, or it does make me emotional, knowing that that kind of, I get the opportunity to build out of that wood and and build an acoustic guitar that someone can pick up and play and have like their own personal experience
Hmm.
with it and with themselves with it. Really, it's, I mean, and that's why I appreciate you and what you're doing, and you and Roberta and Zach are bringing these instruments, not just mine, but so many instruments that are like this level of care, to people. And as much as I'd love to be there to experience each person being separate and having you as a mediator to like really take me out of the picture in the sense of like the client really gets to fully experience the instrument separate from me, which I actually have always tried to do, and why my brand name isn't Forsland Guitars or Reuben Guitars, because I'm trying to separate myself out of respect for the piece itself, the instrument itself.
Why?
Hmm. For one, it it feels to me like I'm more honest with the creation under the brand name of Joy because of that being the umbrella feeling of what I'm trying to create is joy uh, for myself building these and for everybody else involved after. Um, I do feel like I, my work is for me very involved deeply beyond just the manufacturing of an instrument and more an expression of like ideas and thoughts and feelings. And that includes products, obviously. So I needed that separation between Reuben and Joy.
Mm-hmm. It's very interesting because when you go to most guitar makers' websites, it talks a great deal about the guitar maker.
Hmm.
And so it's something I've noticed recently because we're building out the platform of the Boutique Guitar Showcase.com, the website as a singular place where people can come and learn about all of the different unique world-class instrument makers. And as a result, we've been having to go out to a mass amount of websites and such and get their stories and biography and to accumulate them. And what we've noticed is so many of the brands, they are unique world-class brands, but you could interchange the copy and just put that same copy across 100 different brands because they all say the same thing. And most of it is about, I'm a master guitar maker. I make things with only the best materials in the best ways.
Hmm.
Buy my guitar. The story is, I get a lot of shit for saying this, but the narrative is, I am fantastic. I build with fantastic materials. Buy my guitar. Which,
It's true.
when you're designing something or when you're doing marketing and you're considering what the narrative is, what are we going to say about this? How do we communicate all of what this is? My biggest critique is not that they're talking about themselves. My biggest critique is there's got to be more than that because that's what everyone says. So beyond that, what are you doing? Because
Mm.
I know that your guitar looks different than this person's guitar that looks different than this guitar because I don't deal with kind of normal guitars. I only deal with unique world-class instrument makers. And so given the fact that I know each one of these people have a unique product, but yet their communication doesn't actually say that. And so our my efforts as a curator is to first of all, recognize what is unique and interesting about that, but also what about that needs to be communicated.
Hmm.
Whether I'm doing it with my words or like either spoken or written, but also in photography. Because when we do a photo shoot, I used to try and work with hired photographers and they did a fine job taking pictures, but it was really hard to communicate to them what is so special about that guitar that needs to be captured. And so eventually we just took it on ourselves and we take the photographs of all the guitars. And we had to learn the skills of photography so that
Yes.
we could properly capture them. And I think we do a fine enough job of that at this point. But it's because I would look at something going, oh no, this person carves their bridge in a
Hmm.
very particular way. And if I don't get the light and the shadow to come across that correctly, you'll never see that signature kind of carve or move. And you have to know the instruments intimately to be able to be conscious of what makes this. Why is that an important part of to communicate of this particular instrument versus someone else's instrument, so on and so forth. And so you become hyperly aware of the nuances of what everyone else is doing. And because our work is in communications, it became
Mhm.
very strange to me that um, everyone had this, not everyone, the majority of them said the exact same thing. So, full circle, let's bring it all the way back now. Reuben says, I don't want this to be the Reuben guitar. I want this to be the JOI guitar, and separate myself from the build to respect the guitar and the customer. That is exactly the opposite of what I see from almost all of your peers.
Hmm. I yeah, I don't I do see that, and I it wasn't a it was this decision based on the idea to be able to have certain builds. Well, okay, so I think what really defines for my brand is for JOI Guitars. A good example would be the Equilibrium guitar and the story of that instrument for me, and that need for separation because it was inspired by my father, but the the concept is way beyond it was only inspired by my father, but the concept is about the human experience, and that that was a perfect example of like this cannot be Reuben Forsland. This has to be separate from that.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess in a way it's even maybe a little bit of protecting myself because I can people can question me and oh that's what is that? That doesn't make any sense. Like what and I don't have to explain it because it's not doesn't have to be about me. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah. And people are interesting. People are interesting and stories are interesting.
Yeah.
I'm interesting, but I don't feel interesting enough to put my name on the instrument in the sense. And
A few
that's
moments. Okay.
that's yeah. Go ahead.
I get it. You may be underselling yourself, but I appreciate the humility that you're projecting, anyways. Uh, and so, a few minutes ago, you mentioned Jimi Hendrix. And sorry, that sounded like a slightly backhanded comment. I don't mean that you're not humble. I just mean like the intentional effort to project the
Yeah,
humility is what I meant.
appreciate
um,
that.
a few minutes ago, you mentioned, Jimi Hendrix and against his, that he looked like someone who didn't come from means and might not accomplish anything, might not have a particularly high value in society, as the hierarchy of accomplishments are concerned as a young child. You know,
Yeah.
and uh, I come from a fairly quite simple in historical terms. We would have called them a peasant family, and um, I've had a lot of Joe jobs. I mean,
Mhm.
I've driven a lot of when I was younger, from working in, tool and die factories to work in automotive factories to driving forklifts and all sorts of just sort of whatever job I could get at the time,
Yeah.
Um, and I've done fairly well for myself within our industry. And people are surprised to find out I dropped out of high school, that I don't have a particularly, I don't have a focused education, that it's sort of all learned in life, and what I've done. And I've had many, many jobs in a very short period of time because I've been self-employed since I was 25, but I've been working full time since I was 17. And so people are always surprised to find out you did what? You did that? You did, yeah, yeah, but in a short period of time. Nonetheless,
Mm.
what it does is I remember being the guy who was fired from Taco Bell because I showed up late the third time. That was it. You can't show up late three times in in your probationary period, and and I remember working in a factory and the woman beside me losing her finger in a spot welder, and I remember the shrill scream as she
Yeah.
as she cried out in pain of this. I remember moving barrels of hydrochloric acid around on a forklift, and there was this big hump in the warehouse, and I was like, what?
Oh
Why is
no.
this inconvenient big hump? And they're like, well, you know all that acid you moving around? Yeah. So what's on the other side? Is that boxes? Yeah, those boxes have cyanide powder. Do you know what happens when you mix cyanide powder and hydrochloric acid?
Yeah.
That's what they use in the gas chambers in Nazi Germany. I said, oh, I said, is the hump big enough? You know? So, but what it
Humble
does
beginnings.
is it reminds me when not every day, but it's often I walk past a young person
Yeah.
and you don't give a lot of attention to them for whatever they're doing in that moment, but I become conscious of, I wonder if that's someone who's going to
Yeah.
run
Potential.
the country one day. I wonder if that
Yes.
person's an Olympic athlete. You know, I wonder if that person's a Jimi Hendrix or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah.
And so anyways, when you mentioned that about Jimi Hendrix, it just reminded me of this feeling I have sometimes, because I know that certainly people would have looked at me at stages in my life and said, that guy's not going anywhere. You know, high
Well,
school dropout,
potential is
bum, working at Taco Bell, you know, whatever it happened to be, right?
the potential was there. You were just unlocking it through these different experiences and opening your own eyes, I think, the reality of the world and these I imagine the people that you meet and have met through all those jobs, which have probably informed you as a person, have also like I would think they've really made you who you are and how you can deal with people because like situations like that where I mean, when you're working with people that are losing fingers at work and or you're potentially gonna, products that could end everybody's lives, it's like it's not really, I mean, there's a family aspect to you're all there to take care of each other and uh, yeah, I just feel like that kind of stuff really informs who we become as people.
Yeah, of course. You know, but it's for me, it's a reminder not to think too much of yourself, and to also treat everybody kindly and fairly.
Mm,
Not because one day they'll have the chance to stick it to you. That's not what I mean. You know,
right.
like you were mean to me, and now I'm the boss, so fuck you. I don't mean that. I just mean
Yeah.
the idea of it's hard to tell
Yeah.
what someone is going to do or what they're going to become in life, and it's so interesting just to observe it. That's all. And so there are people who, when you meet them, I think people are quick to write off. There's a scene. There's a really big hit TV show from Apple called Ted Lasso. I don't know if you've ever seen anything from Ted
Yes.
Lasso,
I did
but
see that.
yeah. So Ted Lasso is, you know, the basic plot is this woman wins a football, a soccer team, a football team in the UK from her husband in a divorce, and she's gonna wreck that team to screw him over. You know, she hires who she thinks is absolutely the wrong coach, and this guy, everyone
Yeah.
underestimates him, and he wins people over, and their lives change. Cedar Creek Custom Case Shop is your premier fretted instrument custom case maker, and we invite you to create a musical instrument case unlike any other, one that's unique to you. Every Cedar Creek custom case is hand-built by highly skilled craftspeople using only select woods, Providence Forge hardware, and premium instrument-friendly materials. At Cedar Creek Custom Case Shop, we are dedicated to helping you design the case of your dreams. Find out more at cedarcreekcases.com. Are you serious about the business of guitar? Then you need to join us on Patreon. We're building a future where guitar makers are able to live prosperous lives making instruments that inspire the musical experience, which helps to create a more beautiful world. Where others who are passionate about the guitar can thrive, those who help in the promotion and resale, trade shows, writing of books and articles are supported as a valuable part of the community. A community where we explore with curiosity and encourage those around us in their endeavors. With a community effort, we can accomplish far more than we can individually. So let's be serious about your guitar business and join us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Jamie Gale Music. We are better together, so let's do this together.
I love where we've been, and I'm excited about where we're going.
This space is normally reserved for brands who make stories like this possible, like the Dario and the Cedar Creek Custom Case Shop. If your company belongs in this conversation, let's talk. We partner with brands who value craft, culture, and the quiet power of a well-placed idea.
So there's this scene in this show called Ted Lasso where basically this character has been underestimated his whole life, and he talks about it. And he's in this strange scenario where someone's made a wager at a dartboard. And he said, for whatever reason, people have always underestimated me. And he says, I don't know why. Maybe because of my funny accent, maybe because of the way I look. But I've always been underestimated. And he says, and I've eventually realized, it's people just aren't curious. They're incurious. And they make assumptions. And if they just stop to ask a few questions like, have you ever played darts before? Or did you grow up playing darts every Sunday afternoon with your dad since you were 7 years old? I would have answered yes. Are you right-handed? No, I am not. And he throws a bullseye with his left hand, And it's just this whole idea of assumptions. And so one of the things that I think is super important to remain conscious of and to practice is curiosity and wonder.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I really enjoy about our conversations, Reuben. It's what I enjoy about your work is the sense of curiosity and wonder. So thank you for that.
I appreciate that. It's definitely a big compliment that never been presented in that form, like as that, and I love that approach or viewpoint of it.
Well, the thing is, I don't want to insult you, but when I first met you, so
Yes.
you come from a boarding culture, from a biking culture, from an adventure sports culture. You don't look like all the other luthiers when you're at a guitar show. Often you're wearing a hat which looks maybe more suited to someone riding a skateboard in Long Beach than it does to a typical guitar maker, and your choice of glasses, which you're not currently wearing, again, references a bit of that sort of board culture in it. And so I suspect that people often underestimate you. And as soon as you start to have a conversation with you, you realize there's a lot more going on here. And then when you get to know you and hear about all the amazing things you've done in your life, I don't think we even talked about you. I believe you held a time record in your not professional cycling, but I think you made a pretty substantial mark at some point in time. You didn't just ride your bike, man. You competed with the best. And so is that, I don't mean, as I said, I don't want to be insulting in any way, but do you recognize that? Do you recognize that people probably underestimate you? And does that bother you?
Yes. I do recognize it, and I actually feel like it takes pressure off
Mm-hmm.
if people expect a bunch from you because of how they see you. Then I think we as a human tend to look at people and make judgments obviously from visual right away. And I try to not do that in my life with people. Because of my experience growing up with my life being, grew up in a home with five brothers and absent father with a drinking problem, and so when you feel people question who you are based on what you look like when you pull up in your car or your family pulls up in your car, they don't really. We tend to write a story about people right away in our minds off of simple things that we see right away. And I understand that I do that. So I, but I also try to do that as minimal as possible. I do recognize that I don't always fit in the sense that I might look different, but I have a lot bubbling underneath. And I've always been a bit of a quiet person and enjoyed getting to know people more one-on-one, where people can learn. I learn personally better in smaller groups or one-on-one than I'm not a extrovert that, you know, takes over the room. And so, yeah, I appreciate that if people come and they're open to diving in more about who I am and with my work, and that's exciting. And I feel the same back. Like it's fun learning about people, not just the things we see, but the
Hmm.
things that are beyond that. What makes them who they are.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, that's a curiosity again, isn't it?
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, and openness. Yeah.
So do you feel like you're a very open person? You're able to you deal well with talking to groups of people. Um, how does it work for you growing up in that experience in, you said Newfoundland?
No,
Where was it that you grew up?
no, I grew up in and around the area of Toronto. My
Okay,
father is from Newfoundland. My father comes from
okay,
the small fishing village, not me. I'm a half-breed mainlander, I say. You know,
okay.
my mother's from rural Ontario. My father's from Newfoundland. But I grew up in the suburbs. You know, I think you grew up in Canada, didn't you?
In a small town in Sylvan Lake, Alberta, until I was 11, and then Canada
Then
until I was
Canada.
17. Yeah,
So Canada is very much.
my teenage years.
I spent much of my formative years in Mississauga and Oakville, which is very similar to Canada as far as it was built
Okay,
up around the same time. It's a suburb of a major city,
yeah,
all of that. And so, um, but no, you know, the experience of my siblings is very similar to mine, but we're very, very different from each other. You know, my two brothers and I don't have a lot in common as far as character is concerned and the way that we act and what we do in life. And so sometimes I wonder what the growing up part of it has to do with anything. You know, of course it shapes us, you know.
yeah, yeah.
You know, I moved a lot. I moved 20 times by the time I was 20 years old.
Oh,
So many
wow.
years I went to two different schools in the same year. I went to four different high schools.
Oh,
And so I've moved a lot, which I say helped me adjust and adapt very quickly. And it helps me probably learn to judge a character pretty fast because sometimes it doesn't work out so well. I remember one school I moved to at the beginning of grade 6, and the way that school happens in Canada anyways, at least back then, you would get in, you would sit down at your desk, and then opening announcements would come on and everyone would stand up
yeah,
and sing the national anthem. And back then we also had the Lord's Prayer. So we also had to say a Christian prayer at the beginning of the school day. And before the opening announcements started, I was already in a fist fight with the kid who sat beside me. And I wasn't looking to pick a fight, you know, I just moved there. I was the
yeah.
new kid, you know, but
Geez.
that's kind of, you get there and everyone wants to establish the hierarchy as
Yeah,
fast as possible. And I'm large. I'm not a small person. You know, I've always been the kid at the back in the middle of the photograph, which means I was always the biggest kid in my class. And
okay.
so a new kid who's also a big kid, you want to take this guy down as
Oh
fast as
yeah,
possible.
yeah. We want to set some
so,
domination stuff here.
so it wasn't that I learned how to adjust in hierarchy just so I could dominate. It was also sometimes so you could survive.
Yeah.
And so I think that probably is part of why I look a little deeper with people, because,
Mhm.
misjudging someone can be costly. You can end up, in a fight you don't want to be in,
That's, that's right.
you make the wrong
If
move.
possible, you want people to be your friends, not your foes, right?
Yes, yes,
That's
yes. A kind, reciprocal relationship. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. That's what the good life looks like. But that's not how it went everywhere I went.
no.
You'd be, even though you didn't move a really great distance, it might have been 30 kilometers, but the culture was substantially different from one spot to the next,
Right.
or the area would have a little more affluence than the other area did, and that meant that things were different
Hmm.
interests and such. And so, anyways, the point is uh,
So
you,
you've become a person who adapts well under many situations, and from what I can tell, that's part of the gift of what you have with the boutique guitar showcases. I mean,
yes.
you're going to all different countries. You go to how many countries do you travel with now for the show?
So we average 25 cities and 12 countries over 3 continents. That's kind of the average for most years.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and you're right, and we do just kind of move from spot to spot. It's very normal for us. My wife, by the way, also had moved 20 times by the time she was 20 years old, and so we have this life where we've moved our family around, and our kids are very used to it, and as a result, my son lives in Strasbourg, France. He was very comfortable moving to a whole other country to be with his love, and my daughter moved to northern BC, and now she's in southern BC. But the intention, once he gets his commercial scuba diving license, is that's a ticket to being able to work all over the world. They're looking for adventure,
Yeah.
and so adaptation is important. But I do want to say, without saying too much, that not my siblings and my wife's siblings did not take the same approach to movement and to adaptation.
Hmm.
There's a difference between those who accept their circumstances and make whatever they can from what they have. And there's other people who choose to see change as something that's been inflicted upon them, and they're victims of change. And that's a choice. That's a choice in your mind. You know,
Hmm.
have there been things that happen to be out of my control? Yes. But I'm not going to let it stay that way. I'm going to take control of it as fast as possible. I'm not going to be a victim of someone
Hmm.
else in any particular circumstance. I can make choices to improve my circumstances. And I'm very much believe that I'm in control of not everything. I don't rule the world by any means, but there's a lot I can do to improve myself and my
Yeah.
own circumstances. I don't make excuses for where I am or what has happened to me, or if I have done something that I should be apologizing for. I hope I'm quick to apologize and ask for forgiveness. That's part of owning it also. You know,
Hmm.
and I suspect that you're similar. That's how someone who's good at
That's,
adapting has to navigate that. Otherwise, you go from jail to jail.
that's like great.
which
I
which I know
think
some of
it's
those people too.
so you see it, you switch the situation from it. Well, all these situations are challenges, but you can use the word opportunity in as well at the same time.
Hmm.
And it sounds like that's what you've done. I feel like I've done that as well. And
Hmm.
I've seen brothers I have brothers that haven't seen it the same way as well.
Hmm.
And when it's right into your family, you can see the difference of like, okay, we both experienced this both A, and I chose G and they chose F. And
Hmm.
what is the outcome of each choice? And then you look over a lifetime of the choices, and I believe that opportunity and challenge are connected very strongly. And I feel like if you maybe this was survival for you. It was for me, is if I turn that from that challenge usually came with some fear.
Hmm.
And if I could twist it into the idea of opportunity, it would make it less scary and possibly even benefit me more.
Hmm.
And I feel like that's very much in my work, and I would say I see that in the challenges of traveling the world with 50 instruments from 25 different luthiers. Uh, can only imagine the pile of challenges and opportunities that come with that.
Yeah, it certainly does both, and it mostly has worked out. But there's been lots of times where there's some challenges we don't generally tell them about. You, the customer, we historically we were robbed back in 2017, 2018.
Oh,
It was only our
oh,
second tour, and oh yeah, we
wow.
were robbed, and it was a real big deal. It was all over the internet. There were 15 guitars stolen out of 50.
Wow.
uh, and my wife's wedding rings, engagement rings, the video suites, all of her clothes, all of our videographers' clothes. The window was smashed in. They just grabbed whatever was easy. So the storage, the guitars were missing from the middle. These ones had
Yeah,
cupboards in front of them to the side. They didn't bother to grab the ones that had things in the way.
yeah, to reach in.
Suitcases that hadn't been unpacked. They grabbed any suitcases that were just like literally just smash and grab is what it really seems like it was. They were very
Yes.
efficient. They didn't waste their
Wow.
time dealing with other stuff, and that was very dramatic, and
Yeah.
complicated, and navigating that and being honest about what happened also, and the police said we couldn't have done anything about it. The police said it was better we weren't. I was I was 50 feet away eating barbecue at a picnic table facing the bus. And they went in the other side. We're under a street light on a street in front of a restaurant. I'm outside at a picnic table facing it. And they went in the other side and pulled it out. The police said, when they saw how they did it, they said, this wasn't their first time. It is much better you or any of your family were not in the vehicle. They probably were
Okay.
armed and this would have been ugly.
Oh,
Uh, Nonetheless, so they didn't blame us for it. The insurance companies would have charged us if they could have, but they couldn't blame us either. Nonetheless, there were people who blamed us. And there
yeah.
were 11 guitar makers affected. 7 of them were, they knew us already. So they didn't think
Yeah.
that we would have done this, but 4 of them chose to take it. And the 4 kind of knew each other and it was their first time working with us.
Yeah.
Thought that we had arranged it or we were stealing from them.
Hmm.
And they said awful, awful things. They tried to cancel my career. They called NAMM. They called the retail stores. They called the other guitar makers. They tried to literally cancel us in our second tour.
Hmm.
Um, and then we had to
Wow.
cross the desert with a broken window. And so the next window was fixed in the next event in Tucson at Rainbow Guitars. And then we drove up to Vegas, but we had to get our clothes. We had to get clothes for my wife and the videographer, a new suitcase, editing suite because we made videos every day, all this kind of
Yeah.
stuff. His second camera was down. So we were exhausted, and we didn't quite get to Vegas in time. And we'd been invited to a concert. Jason Aldean, a country artist, and our videographer had done a lot of work with drummers, and the drummer had invited him to the show. Anyways, we stopped short of Vegas, exhausted, and slept in a state park. We were traveling in a bus, went into a state park camping site in a canyon. Our cell phones didn't work. Woke up in the morning, and as we drive towards Vegas, our phones start going off saying, Vegas, hope you guys are okay. Like, okay, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. We didn't really think anything of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as
Yeah.
we got closer, we had found out that a gunman had gone into the Mandalay Bay Casino and shot out the window and killed a bunch of people and shot a bunch of other ones in Las
Oh.
Vegas during the Jason Aldean show, the show we were supposed to
Oh.
be at.
Wow.
So our friend, our videographer, the drummer called him the next day and told him like what had happened and how they played through the first 30 seconds. They thought it was fireworks. They didn't know what was going on. They got in-ear monitors. They're just
Yeah.
they're entertaining still. And then how they got rushed off the stage and hidden in the bus. And
Wow.
so, had we not been robbed in San Antonio, we might have been shot in Vegas. But now we have no
There you go.
passports. We're in a foreign country. We're a little messed up from being robbed and almost shot.
Yeah.
And now we've got to arrange for passports because we're supposed to fly out of our last date from Seattle and go right to Europe. But we're foreigners in the U.S. without passports now. Just me and Roberta, my wife. And so, this stuff happens, and we've been caught up in protests, and the Yellow Jacket protests in Europe, and we've been stuck in the mud in the Flemish mud trying to get the ferry to England, and things happen on the road, man. But you got a team who's used to being flexible. You get out, you get stuck in the snow in the Alps. You put the chains on. You get to the next event. You do the next show. But other people, any one of those events might have been enough to break a lot of people, right? Yeah. You would have gotten up. You would have been with me putting the chains on in the snow.
Adaption and perseverance, for sure.
Yeah. You would have adapted with me, and you would have gotten along fine, But that's it. So we're people who grew up with a lot of change and a lot of some people would say trauma. But it's, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. And right. So here we are.
Here you have your work and I have my work, and we're using all that stuff into our lives in ways, and including work. So
yes,
it feels good to take these things and create with it.
Yeah.
Whatever that creation is.
Yes. And the thing I like about that with you that I resonate so much with is, man, they might just look like guitars to some people, but this is our work, and somehow we're trying to make the world a better place doing the thing that we do. And you think, how can you change the world with guitars? Well, you don't change the world with any one act. It's conversations. It's one story at a time that slowly shifts culture. And people who care about what they're doing, who build with intention, who talk about different philosophies and different materials and different subject matter as to what inspired this particular piece, that's one conversation. And people come to the Boutique Guitar Showcase and say, man, I thought I was coming to see a bunch of amazing guitars. And I did. But I didn't know that it was going to change my life, because I learned about the concept of eudaimonia, from Aristotle, because a guitar maker built a guitar thinking about the philosophy of eudaimonia, and then I'm telling the story and educating on eudaimonia, and so they come thinking they're coming to see guitars, but they go often completely inspired, thinking about things they didn't know a guitar was going to make them think about. And so I do think it's possible to shift culture, even doing something like making a guitar, because that gives us a chance to share a story. And narrative and storytelling is the human superpower. It's the one thing that we have that none of the animals have on the planet, is we have the ability to communicate a narrative to each other. And that narrative can spread amongst 1 billion people, and all of us have the same cause in our head.
Mm-hmm.
And so the world changes with one conversation.
It does.
And so,
it's very, very. We can connect in an emotional manner and let our guards down and express ourselves and share and celebrate and cry and all the things, and that can all be wrapped up into a guitar even. And if not in the guitar, it can be expressed with the guitar that's been made by the luthier, by a guitar builder, by a musician. I think that's one of the other really big gifts of being involved in creating instruments, or for yourself selling an instrument or bringing these instruments to the world, is players that get to take them and now do their inspiring work with them and tell their stories. And that's part of what excites me about being a guitar builder, is being part of that. I'm not made to be a musician, singer, songwriter, but man, if I'm gonna get close by with making the guitar that he might or she might or they might create with, and that feels amazing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that to me is the primary thing that people want to be connected with these works, is they see the greater value. Some other people will just see what you do and what I do as, man, you guys are making too much of this guitar thing, and that's okay. But
Yeah.
there's others who connect with the narrative, and they connect with the
Yeah.
value of the work and the value of the materials and the value of the social connection, because the guitar has really affected the world in very interesting ways.
Mhm.
I had a UNESCO, so United Nations ambassador, tell me that they see the guitar as a tool for creating peace, because every time famine breaks out or war breaks out or something where they need to gather people together, inevitably someone shows up with a guitar
Mhm.
and starts raising awareness and starts bringing peace.
Mhm.
And I had never thought of the guitar that way, but that's how the UN sees it.
I
Interesting, huh?
agree. It's the I would think it's the most played instrument by the human race. I would think.
Might
It's
be.
definitely like the background for what the world I know. I mean, obviously there's
Hmm.
different worlds out there, but the world I know, it's the background of growing up and the stories on the radio or on the CD or on the tape player and on
Hmm.
the records. And yeah, I mean, and it's funny, you can even notice the different, I mean, working in construction, there's like, there's a storyline that the classic rock storyline that's really tied to that kind of like experience. Those construction guys,
Hmm.
they always went to the classic rock station, and it was their thing. And then you go to gallery, and you've got different kind of music, and those kind of a group of people tend to listen to. And
Hmm. Hmm.
but most of the time, there's a guitar strumming away in the background of that, whatever it is. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's partly because the guitar evolves with culture and with people. The violin's locked in. The piano is locked in. Now, the keyboard is not. The keyboard is, if you look at the piano as a system of musical interface, it's not locked in. It continues to
mhm,
evolve. But almost everything else, trombone, saxophone, flute, whatever they happen to be, have arrived somewhere. But the guitar continues to evolve with culture, and the needs of culture, whether it be acoustic or electric, or the Hawaiian guitar, which is the lap steel, which turns into the pedal steel guitar in Nashville or Southern California, the country music scene. And, it
mhm.
just continues to change and evolve with the people. It really is the people's instrument. Yeah.
And that's the gift of the boutique guitar showcase, and why I'm really grateful to be part of the group of people that are creating instruments that you're talking about, that are continuing to evolve it and be part of that evolution. It's really a fun thing to be part of.
Well, I hope that's true. And I wish it sounded a little less like a commercial, but thank you for saying it nonetheless.
It is. It's as an introvert who doesn't run around with guitars in his hand saying, "Anybody want to buy this?" I
Yeah.
appreciate the opportunity to be part of a group of people that are on that same kind of, I guess, same bus, you could say. We're all on
Yeah.
we're not the same people, but we're on the same bus going in this, hopefully in the, maybe not the exact
Yeah.
same direction, but traveling around with the same concepts and ideas, and that could be far different, but they're almost like the same, based on the the big vision of like, this is an instrument that I think can be more than it is already, and
Hmm.
we'll try. We'll see what happens.
Oh, we're better together. So
Yeah.
Reuben, it's tradition for me to, as we start to close up the podcast, to give the last topic back to our guests. Is there a topic that you were hoping that we would discuss today that maybe we haven't touched on yet, or something that you wanted to bring up or tell us about, or ask me a question or anything of the sort?
Wow. I think the question I would have was be, do you have, in all the years of traveling around with world-class, beautiful instruments, storied or new designs, have you don't have to say which one, but have you come across one that really, really was like one that you would have loved to have in your living room?
Well, that's yeah, it's an interesting question. So I'm not someone of favorites. I'm also not a collector. As a matter of fact, my wife jokes that one day you're going to find Jamie a hermit in a cave by himself with a really great pair of shoes on, eating a very nice piece of cheese. Because although I like fine things, I'm not a collector of things.
Yeah.
And I have this sort of idea that I want to live kind of, I avoid the golden handcuffs. So I've never owned a house.
Yeah.
I've never had a mortgage, you know. I've mostly always bought cars I could just buy in cash, you know,
Yeah.
and I don't like being tied down to, this means that I'm going to be in this place or making these payments for 5 years or 10 or 30, Jesus, 30 years on a mortgage or whatever. And so the only favorite in the world that I have is my wife. She's my favorite obsession. Everything else I can mostly let go. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love my kids and my grandchildren also, but the point is I'm not a collector of things. Now, however, let me give you a little something to go on. I am working on a series and maybe even an actual book of remarkable guitars. And these will be the guitars in my career that stand out among all of the incredible guitars. It'll be probably 10 or 12 pieces that are just like, these are on just a different level, these guitars. So that's not one guitar, and I'm sorry. I can't tell you that. But yeah.
The guitar connects even with you connect with the guitar well and deeply as well. Whether or not want one for the living room or not, it's deeply a passion.
I mean, there's guitars in my living room, to be clear, you know, but and there's a drum set in my living room also, you know, at least the one here in Canada. I'm a musician, not just a single instrument person. I like to play multiple instruments. There's an upright bass by the front door. There's a drum set in the living room. There's also an ukulele on the bookshelf, and an electric guitar, an acoustic guitar, a cajon. You know, there's lots of musical instruments in our home, so don't take it that way. But I don't feel the need to accumulate them. Yeah. And they came about in different ways, but not via collection and paring down. So, yeah.
Well, I learned a little bit about Jamie then. I hadn't ever asked you that, and to find out that you've got all these instruments in your life. That's new for me.
Yeah, I mean, I started as a drummer, and then I got a bass, and then I got guitar. And so, yeah, the only musical education I have really is actually as drums. I read rhythms. I read rhythm notation, but I don't really read melodic notation. I understand the system of it, but I would have to like go to like middle C and count my way up or down, or on the staff, or, you know, the bass clef, you know, I remember which one is between the two dots, you know, just like I learned in school as a kid. You know, it's not a sophisticated system. I don't look at it and understand it like I read a book like a real educated musician does. So, yeah, nonetheless. Well, Reuben, so I'm sorry I answered your question, but I probably didn't give you what you were looking for.
Yeah, that's good. No, I found something. I found a gem in there for sure.
Good. Wait for the book. So, Reuben, thank you so much for being on Life with Strings Attached. I really appreciate you being open and sharing your remarkable stories. Thank you for making inspiring guitars. I love sharing the stories that you bring to us that I get to take around the world and talk with people about or at the NAMM show. And so Reuben and I are going to move over to the business of guitar, and we're going to talk for just another 2 or 3 minutes. We do this behind a paywall on Patreon because it is guitar business. And if you're not in the guitar business, 1, you might not care to hear it. 2, if you're not in the guitar business, maybe you shouldn't hear it. So it gives us a little bit of safety to sort of talk about some inside business that not everyone can hear on YouTube or Spotify or something of the sort. But if you are in the guitar business, please head on over to patreon.com/business of guitar. Again, that's patreon.com/business of guitar. And Reuben and I are going to talk about something that he does, which I think is very unique in the business world. And, well, you probably want to hear it. But for now, let's say goodbye to our regular folks here at Life with Strings Attached. Thanks for being on the show, Reuben. Ciao for now.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Life with Strings Attached. If today's conversation meant something to you, consider passing it on. These stories find their place through the people who share them. A new episode comes out every Friday, right here, wherever you're listening. I'm Jimi Gale, and thanks for listening to Life with Strings Attached.